Hello, team fighters and tacticians. My name is TP Skyen, and like pretty much everybody else, over the last few weeks, I have been suckered in by the siren song and the sweet scents of Teamfight Tactics, and it's kind of been affecting my video output, actually. I've been spending so much goddamn time on that game. So at this point, I think maybe let's split the difference and try and repair some damage by doing videos about Teamfight Tactics. Now, the trouble with that is, there's not a lot about Teamfight Tactics for me to make videos about. It doesn't have story, it doesn't really add new characters, and it doesn't have a lot of, like, unique aesthetics going for it, so I was like, what can I do? Well, fortunately, Teemo.gg came to my rescue recently when they added the Little Legends to their excellent model viewer, which means we have an opportunity to talk about their wonderful animations. And like most animation that Riot Games does, this is one of the things that I will always give them credit for, they are uniformly excellent, and I'm going to enjoy gushing over them, and we're going to talk a little bit about their character designs as well. We're going to start with, well, the one who's unfortunately my least favorite, which is the Hauntling, who has a couple of things that I feel like make him not quite great as a Little Legend. He's still adorable as hell, and if you enjoy him, I will not take anything away from you, but as the thing, there's parts of him that I feel are kind of lackluster. Now, one of them is not really the Hauntling's fault. Like, it's not really a problem with the Hauntling, but a problem with how League of Legends renders certain aspects of its aesthetic, and that's specifically the way they render ghostly characters. Now, when you have a ghostly character, the main visual indicator that someone is ghostly, that they're not quite here, that they're dead spirits haunting the living world, is that they tend to be some version of translucent, right? Like, you can see through them, or they're sort of vaguely semi-transparent or semi-opaque, something like that. And that's something that League of Legends just does not ever do for its ghostly characters. And like I said, this is not the Little Legends' fault. You can see the same thing happening with characters like Mordekaiser and Hecarim, but when they want to render a ghostly spirit body, as it were, rather than actually render, you know, a ghostly energy floating around, they render this big solid block of material, which they then add texture to. Now, that could be a thing of trying to cut down on how much graphic processing power League of Legends requires, because they're always trying to keep it accessible to people with worse hardware. But whatever the reason may be, this just doesn't really say ghost to me. It says this is a bit of taffy that came to life and put a mask on, and it's floating around. Now, the animator is doing everything they can with the shape that they're given, and you can see there's a lot of lovely little stretching going on here in the idle animation, for example. Notice how the collar moves down faster than the head does, so you get this neck stretching animation thing going on that really gives it that lovely personable bounce, which is a big part of how you make something like the Hauntling adorable and appealing, is that you give it that bouncy, stretchy personality, that cartoon personality, which is the animator has managed pretty well with a lot of the Hauntling's animations. I particularly like the dance animation. I also love the little stretch of insight that they had with the Hauntling, which is, you can see how as the Hauntling changes its expression, you can see good lord. You can see how the eyes on the mask that it's wearing deform as well. And as we get into the dance, you get this little sort of anime happy face thing going on, which is an inspired little choice, like to use the mask to emote with the character. It's something that works really, really well and does a lot to help the Hauntling get personality. I also do love the way in which, like I said, I'm not really a big fan of the whole solid blob approach to modeling a spirit body, but there's some good stuff going on in the way that the animator, you can see how they're really bending and swaying the flame hair part of the body to really get that sway into it, and once that's in motion, you really do get that sense of fluidity, that sense of, oh, this could be a little fire that's kind of being swayed through the wind. That's something that a good animator can really do for even a semi-lackluster character model, is you can add that sense of animation to it. Now, the thing about the Hauntling is that it's one of the Little Legends that gets a major upgrade if you actually, spend the time and money to get it up to its second level, where not only you get the nice little horns on the mask, which is something, but the big upgrade that they get are the hands. And that's kind of, I feel like once the Hauntling is level 2, it moves up a few steps in the ranking, because here, once it has hands, there's a lot more that it can really do in terms of its emoting, because here, the Hauntling does the exact same thing in its base form when it doesn't have hands, but you don't get that little, it's using its hands to spin the mask, rather in its level 1 form, and I'm going to try not to change over too many times. You can see how the mask is just kind of, it just kind of spins around. And there's not really I don't get the same sense of mischievousness from base Hauntling that I get from upgraded Hauntling, really. And there's not really that sense of sort of devilish anticipation. I really love its idol. I really love that its idol is doing that Mr. Burns, excellent. That little hand gesture with the hands folded together. That's so lovely, because that looks scheming. That looks kind of, I am planning a terrible demise for you. Like, that gives it a lovely feeling to it. And it's the same thing with the run animation. Like, the run animation on the normal Hauntling is fine, but having that little, it's holding its hands by its side, and you get that lovely, you can see that this sort of slightly desynchronized bouncing with the hands and the body, where you can see the hands and the body come down, the body reaches its lowest point here, the hands keep moving, and then as the hands are settling in, the body starts moving up again. So you get this sort of sense, slightly desynchronized bouncing between the hands and the body. Which is what gives it that lovely, which is really what gives it that bounciness that makes it feel kind of alive with energy. And again, without the hands, it's just such a downgrade. And it's a bit of a weird thing compared to so many of the other little legends where like, they don't change their model that much from, you know, from level to level. And you can also see here with the Hauntling, when it casts its spell. Now, on the normal Hauntling, all you really get is this lovely smearing on the mask and stuff as it moves the body. But here you get that hand motion, that lovely smearing animation hand motion, which just makes this thing so much more appealing and alive. And I would really like them when they, instead of the model they have right now for the base model where it doesn't have any hands, I really want them to add the hands, because it's so much a part of the personality of that thing. And I really feel like if people do like the Hauntling and they really do want that little ghost companion thing to be their little legend, it kind of sucks that unlike the rest of them, you have to upgrade it to level 2 before you get access to the full personality of the thing. I think that's a pity, because there's a lot of good stuff here. And if anyone's wondering, by the way, we're not going to be looking at the level 3 models, because they're exactly the same as the level 2 models. They just don't, the level 3 models just get some little particle effects and lighting effects floating around them, which is another thing about specifically the ghostly champions like the Hauntling, is that at level 3, it gets that ghostly glow thing, animation thing on it, that, again, I kind of feel like should be there from the start to show that it is a ghost. That glow, that sort of ghostly energy coming off it. I quite like the laugh animation, too. Because, again, you get that sense of mischievousness. That sense, it's kind of like the Skull Kid in Majora's Mask, really. That kind of swaying from side to side, just so immensely pleased with itself. Like, almost kind of dancing its laughter out, which is a really good approach to, especially when you have this ghost body where you don't have any legs you can emote with, you can't really do much with it. It's a good idea to really exaggerate the swaying, especially again because it's supposed to be this sort of ghostly flame body kind of, so swaying motions are a really good idea for that. I also quite like its recall. Now, the model viewer has a little trouble with certain types of animations, but I do love like that when it's recalling, which I've never actually tested if you can do that in Teamfight Tactics, if you can make your thing recall. But the way it recalls is it sort of slowly swells up and then it pops, and then the mask falls down. You can see the body is still there, it's just in hiding, and then the mask falls down and just lies on the ground. And then there's the respawn, which is whoop, right? You can see how those two lead into each other so well, where the mask rises into the end and the body comes to join it, and then you get this really I am back, which again, the hands do so much to sell the confidence and sort of the energy of that particular gesture. So I'm really sad the hands aren't on the main one. Anyway, let's move on to the Silver Wing. So the Silverwing is stinking adorable. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. It's designed to be. Its entire character design is designed to evoke adorableness. Now, I do love a couple of things about this thing. Specifically, the way in which it mixes cat and bird features, like the eyes and the beak and the head shape and stuff. That's all bird. Like, that's all the kind of stuff you'd see on a bird. But then the way they mix in aspects of a cat. Let me see. I think it's the run animation where you can really start to see, because you get this kind of unique, interesting, where you can see it pushes with the hind legs, lands on the front legs, and then goes into this. And that's kind of reminiscent of the way that I've seen, like, leopards and cheetahs run, in terms of, like, you get this waiting to completely gather the legs and before pushing off with the back legs. But it has this wonderful, unique sense to it, because here's the thing, with the big puffed up chest piece there, that too is a bird feature, as much as it is a cat feature, and it's being accounted for in this bit of animation really nicely, in that what this thing seems to be doing more than anything is that it's propelling that big heavy chest and that big heavy head ahead as it's running. So you get this arc described, right, where you start here and the chest moves up and then it lands for bunk. And then the legs kind of catch up with the chest, the back legs, and then once they're ready to push off again, boom, the chest gives another lurch forward. And it's got a really kind of unique little running animation to it, which it's not 100% cat-like, but it's certainly not bird-like either. It's a very unique expression of that particular physicality that I really like. So, let's see, what else does it have? It has a lovely celebration animation that I really quite like, which unfortunately doesn't play quite correctly in this particular animation viewer, but where you get this glide down, which is what I mean with the mix between bird and cat features, where they really do manage very, very well getting movement features from both of the species or all of the species that are being combined here into this tiny little thing. That's the other thing that's a challenge about Little Legends in particular, is that they are small. They're really small and compact. Like, you don't have a lot of long limbs that you can use to do stuff. You don't have a lot long limbs that you can use to emote. You have to do a lot with very little, and it can be really hard to make animations like that read. But the thing I love about this celebration is you get this bit here, right, that goes into a stop in the model viewer, and it's because it can transition into two things. It can transition from a celebration into a run, where you get directly into the run cycle, as you can see there, or it can transition from the celebration animation into an idle. And you get these two very different reactions, because, like, the run is it basically just goes into a run immediately. But I love the way it lands when it goes into the idle, where it just kind of slides to a halt on the ground, and then it's like, oh, I've stopped. And then it gets up, which is such again, that lovely little mixture of, like, it's a cat's laziness mixed with a bird's natural sort of hyper-aware inquisitiveness that I really like the ways in which that has been integrated. Something else I noticed about it is that this is the hurt animation. This is when it gets hit with attacks from enemies, when it loses a round. Something they've avoided doing with the Little Legends is have them show physical signs of pain and distress. And that's both because they're adorable and you don't want players to feel too bad when stuff happens to them. And it's the same thing with the death animation, where it just flies away. When it loses and dies, it just goes, oh, well, screw this. And I love the swoop here. Let's see if we can get a good angle on it. Yeah, see that? It goes into the air, and then you get this wind up, and then that little, and then zoof. Which I really love that. That's such a nice, smooth animation. That's such a smooth way to do it. Which, of course, is the other problem you have when they're so small, is that it can be a little difficult to plausibly communicate that these tiny little clusters of feathers can propel this thing like wings can. So there's a lot of work being put into, like, you can see how the tail is doing a lot of the work for its motion as it prepares to wind up to jump out. The tail swings forward, and then it leans forward, and the tail gives it that final swish as it flies off, which is just so very well done. Here's the idle in. This is when it's going from a run, where you can see again, you know how we talked about in the run animation how it felt a lot like what it was doing. It was sort of throwing its chest forward and then running to catch up. You can kind of see that happening here, where the chest hits the ground and stops, and then the back legs hit the chest and go, and you can kind of see how it gets kind of stopped in its tracks, like, boing, oh boy, what happened there? And then it sits down and remains adorable. And here again, that mix of animal characteristics, where you can see this is really a cat stretch, right, or a dog stretch. Like that kind of real mammal stretching thing going on. But then with the eyes and the face, just that bird expression working so well together. And it's, when you just look at it, it's like, oh yeah, it's adorable, of course it's fine, but it can be really deceptively hard to mix those things, especially in animation, and make it look good. And here's another good little thing, see? Right? As before, we saw the first idle variant, where it's this cat stretch and the yawn thing going on, but then here, this is all bird stuff. This is entirely bird animation. You can see it does the little head tilts and little twists, and it's chirping to kind of emphasize its bird nature. And again, making that work and look like natural motion takes a lot more work in both making the character model and in animating it than you might think. I also love the way it gets up from its laugh, because it does that little roll over to a sort of lying pose, and then it stands up again. It's just like, none of this is like super exceptional, holy crap, I've never seen anything like it, amazing animation, but all of it is just really competently executed and really good. And I love that. Like the taunt is like, it does a little lion roar, and it's like, I throw sand at you. Which again is a lovely little bit of personality to the thing. It's just, I like the Silverwing a lot. It's not my favorite, but I like it a lot. Then we have the Fury Horn, which is literally just like a dog. It's very much supposed to be a dog. In a lot of the ways that it's created. And the dog bear, I suppose, of some sort. But I do love just the pose that they've chosen for it, sitting down and splaying its ass out like that. But the thing about the Fury Horn I noticed is that it never pretty much changes its expression. It's always got those big angry eyebrows going on and that deadpan mouth. And like when it's dancing, it really doesn't do much. It just does that rap, 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 rap. So it's really got this stoic personality thing going on. And again, it's being delivered with so little, like so few resources available, but you do get the sense from this thing that it's just this tiny little stoic, I am fazed by nothing, I am the bravest. And I don't know who animated the run cycle, but I want to hug them. Look at this. I love, like, the bounce. It's the timing on it that makes it like the like this complete determination stride, right? It's so confident, but because it's so short and small, it's also incredibly bouncy and adorable. And that little dissonance between being bouncy and being and adorable, and then being this, you know, stoic, grumpy-faced thing, works really well. I really do love the fast run animation. Take a look at this. You can see how it comes down. It's basically doing a handstand every single time its butt collides with the back of its own head. And then eventually, you know, the legs come down, and then it does the second spring. And then boom, and that's, to me, that seems almost like again, we're talking about this mixing of animal characteristics, where I said this thing is a dog, and that's the primary thing I identify in it, is that it's some kind of small, can't remember what they're called, Shih Tzus? No, but those tiny little fuzzy dogs that are super yappy, and really willful and determined, that's in there. But this animation in particular has the aspect of a goat to me, kind of. It's got that sudden bounciness thing going on. And you can see it here as well. You can see the timing that the animator is using to, right? That very sudden stop and start, where what we saw with the Silverwing was that it was very smooth. It was very well transitioned, like everything transitions very smoothly into each other. The Fury Horn has a completely different personality in that it does dunk, dunk, like it does that dunk, 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 right? It has that suddenness, that stop and start, stop and start, stop and start thing to the timing on its animation. And that does so much to communicate the personality of the character as well, is that they are You know, that it has that kind of square personality, like that kind of hard-edged personality, and just in the same way its animations have a hard edge to them in the timing that's being used. And you can see it here again, like how instead of doing anything smoothly, it goes. It's got that tick-tock thing going on, right? Which again is why I really love the animations on these little things, is because there's so much going on just in the timing. And I do love that it's spell animation. It sneezes. Which is so good. And it's got a great sneeze face too. Right? Look at that. That's so good. It rears back to wind up for the sneeze, and then woof. And then, having stretched itself out so much, because it's this tiny little hard rubber ball thing, it snaps back so hard that it kind of goes off the ground and like poof. And then it floats in the air a little. It does that Wile E. Coyote cartoon thing where like it snaps back, boom, and then it floats in the air just for a little while because it hasn't noticed that gravity is applying to it yet. And then, vunk. And it's again, you can see that that rhythm to it where it's so sudden all the time, which I really do adore. The same thing with the Todd animation. Look at that. It's got that yappy little dog energy. But again, notice that same like energy going on with it. That's in all his animations. It's so complete, which is what I really like about it. Moving on to the Mole Diver, someone who I haven't actually taken much of a look at yet because, well, I never see him in my games. He's also the one that's most anthropomorphic out of all of the characters, I feel like. He's the one that's most, you can do most in terms of animating him, as it were, like a human. With the other characters are much more explicitly non-human. This guy, you can do more human-like animation with him. And you can see that here where he's like, especially using the hands to emote. Which makes perfect sense because he's got those long-ass claws, which can really do a lot to help like exaggerate them. You can see how it happens here with his interact animation, where you can see the claws, the way that they swoop up and down really gives that smooth kind of motion to the way that his hands are working. That's a good one. And again, notice the timing difference, like where the Fury Horn was all like that kind of thing. With here, you got a somewhat more elastic thing going on, where it's like boing. You can see how he notices that the shovel is coming down in a way that he's not ready for, and I love the little widening of the eyes. And then doing, doing, doing. You can see he kind of bounces a little bit, and I love the way that they're doing the nose, like how the nose is always kind of wobbling around and kind of following his motions. That's really quite clever. Look at that. Because it gives a lot of personality to his face, like to have that nose kind of doing its own thing, basically. Oh, right, that's the command animation that they're using. And see, the energy you get here is much more of a springy cartoon character, like in terms of being like a Jerry from Tom and Jerry. If you think about him that way, you can kind of see that energy a little bit more on display in the way that he's timed and the way that he moves. And again, like we talked about with the Hauntling. I forgot the name for a second. You can see that stretch going on, giving him that bounce as he comes back down. And then there was, oh yeah, his Haste Run, which is really, he's basically Naruto running, but he's moving too fast, so he can't lean forward, so he's kind of just like, ah! And I love the pitter-patter of his little legs. See how they're using that stretch and squash to really, that's kind of what I mean when I compared him a little bit to Jerry from Tom and Jerry, and that he's got that same kind of fast leg energy thing going on with his body, where his upper body doesn't actually move that much, but the lower body is doing so much of the work. And this is just like, look how fast it cycles. Like it's got a lot of charm to it. It's a bit of a pity, like he's not I'm not more interested in him as a character. Like he's sort of cute and he's fine. I feel like he's the protagonist of the shonen anime that is the Little Legends. Like if the Little Legends get an anime, he's gonna be the protagonist shonen, like the "we can do this" guys, the bright-eyed, optimistic dude who's sort of always inspiring everybody around him. But he's not gonna be anyone's favorite. It's just my particular take on him. Whee! This is a good one too. He's basically a cactuar here. But yeah, like I said, I haven't really looked much at him because I just don't find him very interesting. Like he's fine, he does his thing, but I just, outside of just being competently animated, it's like there isn't that much to him. He's got good personality. It's just like I'm saying, it's kind of a vanilla personality, shonen anime protagonist personality. Which is, let's save that one for last. But let's have a look at the Feather Knight. Now, the Feather Knight was an early favorite for a lot of people. And I completely understand that because it's freaking adorable. But for me, it's not... Like, it's sort of... A lot of what the charm of the Feather Knight is that it is this big, round penguin. Like, this little blob of a thing. But for me, it just never really came across. Like, again, I love this. I love this energy. Like, this cartoon Sonic the Hedgehog energy that's going on with his tiny little legs that are kind of fluttering and flapping around. But again, much like the Mole Diver, I feel like, yeah, he does a dab. Woo. Like, there's a lack of personality to him. Which I think is a little bit of a pity. Like, I think, especially with being a penguin, I feel like he would have done well with a little malice in his heart. Like he looks tiny and adorable with those big black dark eyes, but I would have liked it if he had that little spark of darkness, that little sense of malice to him. Because the way he's animated, you can see again that there's a particular timing to him that's somewhat different from the other characters. Like, the Mole Diver seemed a little bit more relaxed than the Feather Knight is, and the Feather Knight seemed to have these extremes, where its idle is basically nothing, right? The idle animation is basically nothing, but then you get... Like, any animation it does has a lot of pop. Like, it has a lot of speed to it, compared to, you know... It's base pose. So it goes from this extreme to an extreme. You can see its interaction thing here being this foot tappy, everything moving around, bouncing little thing. Even the hat is bouncing off of its head kind of thing. Which I get why people enjoy it. Like, I get why it works for people. It just, for me, it just never really worked for me. Because I feel like he's trying too hard. I think that's kind of it. I feel like with the way that the Feather Knight is animated, it's trying too hard to be the mean character. Right? Where I feel like a lot more like the Silverwing, the Fury Horn, and the Hauntling kind of have their own personalities. Even the Mole Diver have a personality that's sort of made for them. But for me, in terms of the way that this character is designed and the way that it's animated, it feels a lot more like it was the one that was designed to be a fan favorite. Like, it's the one that's designed to be the mean character, the joke character, the one that people remember, the one that they reference, the one that they go, hey, look at this thing and that. And that's, you know, that's just me, maybe. Like, again, the reason why I've been sort of going a little bit more abstract with this one is that I've kind of said everything that there is to say already in terms of a lot of the ways in which these animations are constructed. It's just so competent. And that's always the thing with Riot, is that even the ones that they make that I don't like, I can still sit here scrolling through them and go, oh, that's a really, you can see how the bandana is sitting on this side of the head here, right? And then, boop, it bounces to the other side, and then he kind of catches it and leans into it as he bounces up, and you get that final thing, and then it comes back to the neutral position. That's really well done. Like, that's a really nice little cycle going on there, that I quite enjoy. But you can see it here. Here you can really kind of see what I mean with him going from extreme to extreme, right? He starts in his idle pose, and then he transitions to this pose, and then he kind of stays completely stock still. Like, he goes from this completely stock still, sudden motion, stock still, sudden motion, staying still, and then he gets into this thing, which again, some part of it just feels like it's trying a little bit too hard, which is a weird thing to say, but it feels like he's trying to endear himself, and trying to be the adorable one, and that for me has always been a bit of a turn-off, which leads us on to my absolute favorite. My favorite one of the little legends, the whole reason why I wanted to do this goddamn video in the first place. This guy. The Rune Spirit. My absolute favorite and objectively the best one. Objectively the best one. I'm just saying, the other ones are fine. He's objectively the best one, and I'm not just saying that because he's the one I have. And with him also, I have a little bit of a quibble about changes in the animation model, but unlike with the Hauntling, where I really feel like by not having the hands level 1, he just becomes a much worse character in terms of his animation than the other little legends. With the Hauntling, with the Sentinel, is a little different, because the level 2 and up Sentinel has a complete circle on its head here, right? Like, the rock bit is complete, it's intact, whereas the base Sentinel has a broken circle. And I really, really, really prefer the broken circle, because of the way that it allows his animations to play out. It allows his little floaty orb head to move around a little bit more freely within the confines of the thing, and also just having that extra little floaty bit, that little bit of disconnect, allows each part of the head to be animated a little bit more independently, or rather feel like it's animated independently, because of course, you know, the animations are very much the same from form to form. But yeah, this is the thing I really like about him. This right here is that you've got the body, you got the arms and the legs, yada yada yada, but so much of this little guy's animation comes from the free-floating motion of his head. Like the way that he can kind of bounce his little orb head around inside the floating parts of the rock there. And you can see what I mean, where having the head be incomplete allows just for a little bit more expression in the way that the rock kind of twists around itself and doesn't quite connect up properly. Especially as it regards that little floating fragment that kind of just floats free from the rest of the body. And I really prefer having that little bit of extra expression, as compared to... Now, the only problem with the Sentinel in the model viewer is that we can't really frame by frame through him very effectively, because it doesn't display a lot of his animations correctly. Which is a pity, but here's one of my one thing that just demonstrates aptly what I really like. You see how, as he's going from the cheer, which is this jumping up thing, into his idle pose. See how the head behaves almost like a droplet, like it bounces down, vroom, almost like a drop of water or a bouncy ball. And then you can see how, and this is again where I prefer the free floating motion of the independent rock pieces, because you can see how they are moving independently of each other. And for me, that independent motion of the rock pieces, they almost act like facial expressions, like the way that each bit of the rock is floating around, especially when it comes to like this bit here, where you can see how he kind of twists his head, and you can see how the rock pieces rotate just a little bit around his head as he moves around, looking from side to side. That little bit of extra expression, to me, is so lovely. It makes him so adorable. Like, I really love this character. I really love how he's animated. But then I'm the kind of guy who has a massive weak spot for characters like, you know, Wally, and like other faceless characters who are animated entirely without, you know, relying on something like a human face to do it. And here, this is so good. See that? That's so good. Look at that. Look at that. His head turns around first. It's like he notices something and is like, oh, hey, look at that over there. And then his body follows him. It turns after the head has noticed the thing, as though they're two separate entities. That's so good. There's so much personality in that. I love it. And you can see it again here. This is really subtle. Like, I feel like I'm not explaining it properly, but the way in which you can see how, like that little motion right there, as he swings his head around, whoop, you can see how the rocks settle into place a little bit, and they're kind of twisted opposite to each other in a way that's really compelling, and you don't really get that so much when you're looking at the... Right? You see what I mean? That there's less independent motion between the different bits of his head, and that kind of makes him a little bit more static, a little bit less bouncy and alive for me, which I think is a real pity. That the sort of the air quotes better version of him has a little bit less expression. At least for me, he does. Where having that little broken head, like, and in terms of like character design, the broken head also indicates more of an adventurous lifestyle, right? Like, he's got a broken head because he's been out doing stuff. The head got shattered by, so he fell down a cliff or something. Who knows? Got broken by a brambleback that was angry at him. Whereas with this thing, like, you've got plants growing all over it. It feels a lot more like this guy has led a sedentary lifestyle, and hasn't really done a lot. Which, again, is a little bit of a pity, when there's that difference between two versions, of the character. Although I like it better with this Rune Spirit because it feels more like you're making a choice between two different versions of the personality, whereas with the Hauntling, it feels a lot like you're just getting an inferior version. Oh, this is so good, too. See that? Like, how... And especially, like, oh, this is something I just have a weak spot for. You see that? You see how the little rock pieces are kind of wobbling independently of each other as they're spinning around his head? And then he stops them, and when he stops them, look at that, the little ball. It bounces around from side to side, like, wang, whoa. And he gets that little dizzy moment. That's so good. And you can't tell me this is not the most adorable greeting in Teamfight Tactics. Look at that. That little spin, and then wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle the hands. And then back to an idle position. And again, look at that. How he kind of, the body kind of bounces the head up. And then the body settles in, and then the head kind of follows and gradually assembles itself. That's so good. I wish he had a better dance, though. Like, this is okay. The idea with this piece of animation, I think, is that the head is doing most of the dancing. You can see how it's bouncing around inside the circle of his head, right? But I kind of wish that there was a little bit more musical rhythm to his dance animation, because this is a little bit simple. Which is a bit of a pity. I feel like you could do a lot of interesting stuff where he kind of plays with his head, like he uses his head like a hat. Like he spins it around like some dancers do with their hats, or he does like a Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator thing where he's sort of dancing with... I don't know, there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do. Also his run animation has a couple of interesting smear frames, or like interesting ways in which you can... Here you can really see the exaggerated ways in which like the head is following the body, right? So the body lands... You can see there's the body lands, then the head follows, then the head bounces up along with the body, and then the body comes down first and bounces up again, and then you get that cycle thing going on, which has that lovely bit of expression. I do wish the head bounced up a little bit higher on the upswing, to just really sell that bouncing animation. And again, I think the idea is that the ball in the middle of the head is kind of taking a lot of that inertia on itself and doing that bounce for you. But yeah, I do love that. I do also love like the way when it comes down, you can see how the ball kind of bounces out of the head almost and then gets caught. Which there's so much lovely stuff you can do with this particular character. There. That bit right there. He's done the joke thing. He's done the bounce, and then the head falls down, and the head bounces around inside his skull. And then that right there. That little motion, to me, has so much inquisitiveness, so much curiosity, and kind of playful spirit to it. And it's just something about the way he kind of bounces out of his joke pose. You go, oh? Look at the way the little rock pieces bounce in his head there. It's just, this to me, something about this just works like magic. I don't know what it is, but there's something about this little animation on the Rune Spirit that just, yes, that's the personality I want. That's the kind of character I really, really good. But yeah, I could talk about the the Rune Spirit all day, but this video is already 40 minutes long, which is probably quite long enough. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, then, thank you very much. I hope you will hit the like button, and the subscribe button, and the bell icon, and good lord, who knows how many other YouTube buttons you're going to have to hit someday in order to get my videos, but please hit all of them so that my channel can stay alive. And if you've enjoyed this lengthy little ramble about the animations of the Little Legends, well, you know, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll do more sort of just animation rambles about various things in League of Legends. That might be interesting. That might be fun. And yeah, if you want to support the channel directly, I have a Patreon. You can go over there. There's some rewards if you sign up for like $1 a month, things and stuff. And if you don't want to sign up for a monthly subscription, I have some tip jars down below where you can give me a one-time donation to say, hey, good job making a 40-minute long video about the Little Legends and Teamfight Tactics where you mostly talked about the Blue Sentinel Spirit. You can also do that. And like I say at the end of my videos, if you have content creators online who you follow, even $1 can be the same as thousands of views on a video, because AdSense and ad revenue is nothing. Like, it's practically nothing. So even that $1, even if it doesn't feel like very much, can make a big difference to the creators you follow. So whether it's me or someone else, if there is an online content creator whose work you adore, whose work you love, even giving them that $1 donation can actually make a big difference. So please consider doing that in the future, when and if you are able to. Anyway, if you haven't enjoyed this video, there's a dislike button down below that you can click on if you hate cute things and fun. If you just hate the Rune Spirit and the Hauntling and the Silverwing and the Fury Horn, if you just hate them and you want them all to die, and you want animals to die, and kittens and birds, and if you want them all to die and go away, and you hate them because you are, like, I don't know, a monster of some kind, you can hit the dislike button. It's fine. Nobody's judging you for being a monster who hates things. Where the hell was I going with that? Thank you very much for watching.